Just real quick, I keep talking about this, but I want to continue to point out we're about to get the yield curve to uninvert. Right now, the reading is just below the center line there at negative 0.01. So it's just right under it. Could see that happen here immediately or in the not too distant future, but it could happen this week. That could rattle the market further. Again, what could happen is it could go positive and then go back into the negative territory, and then the next time it goes positive, it can trigger a much bigger sell-off, or it can stay positive. We could sell off, attempt some kind of recovery. That rally sold as we have the steepening of the yield curve, and we're getting the uninversion of the yield curve as we move towards the Fed pivot. We move towards recession. All of this is going to trigger a bear market for the stock market. Just a fraction away with the reading of negative 0.01, the inverted yield curve that may uninvert before the weekends. We'll see what happens. Again, another signal that's predicting a recession is about to happen. I have to excuse my voice. I have a cold and a sore throat, so I sound a little funny. Sorry about that. We start the month of September off. Big drop. The Dow dropped 100 points. I pointed out previously the Dow is turning off a 125-year trend line. Dow very well could be topping. I think the NASDAQ already has. S&P, I believe, will still make a new high. We have the short trading week. We'll get the private payrolls on Thursday, September 5th. Friday, we'll get the jobs report. It's expected to come in at 162,000 for the amount of jobs created. Employment rate is expected to tick back down to 4.2. Came in at 4.3. Again, the Psalm rule has already been triggered for the unemployment rate, predicting that we're about to have a recession. It hasn't been wrong in decades. It's not going to be wrong this time. These people talking about a soft landing out of the Fed. This is a bunch of Kool-Aid for the retail investors. These people on the financial channels and tell us that we're going to have the soft landing out of the Fed. It's a bunch of poppycock. By the way, the following week we're going to get the CPI and the PPI data on the 11th and 12th, and then week after that, 3 weeks from tomorrow, we're going to get the FOMC meeting, which again we're likely going to have the Fed pivot, meaning that they're going to start the rate cuts. Looking for the market to peak ahead of that, or with it, or shortly thereafter. Well, I've been pointing out that momentum has been bearish on the NASDAQ. It hasn't been bearish on the S&P 500. Well, we've had the momentum line bearish and momentum signals bearish for NASDAQ. Hasn't been that way for the S&P 500. Now the S&P momentum is turning bearish today. There is risk of a bigger pullback for NASDAQ and S&P because momentum, we're getting a reversal of conditions, and the momentum line is turning bearish for the S&P today. This is the NASDAQ daily chart. S&P daily chart, momentum line turning bearish today. So until that turns back to bullish, there's risk of a bigger sell-off. If momentum turns negative, as it already has with NASDAQ, then there's risk of a bigger sell-off. Momentum signals turn bearish to start September off for the S&P 500. See how long it lasts. And I believe the S&P is likely going to make a new high to fill this gap right here. But I told you, again, watching which gap would fill first. The gap, and I'm referring to NASDAQ, gap at 20,400 or gap directly below at the 19,000 area. 19,000 gap got filled. S&P has a gap down here that's not been filled yet, right around the 5480 area. That if NASDAQ attempted to get a legitimate breakout of the bull flag on the 60-minute chart, S&P could try to go fill this gap immediately. It didn't do it. We're looking for it to fill that gap at a later date, likely surrounding the Fed pivot, September 18th. Moving into the political season, the election, Oftentimes there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the election that can add to volatility. Guesses surrounding the September 18th Fed pivot will see the S&P move to new high. My guess is the Dow's peaking right now for last week, and NASDAQ already has July 10th. S&P momentum shifting here. We'll see how long it lasts. Momentum line turning bearish. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. I do need your help in order to make it work. Just put it all out there for free and just ask that you do what you can to help out. I do that because I don't want sponsors. They contact me all the time. I don't want to sell you things or send you to brokerages that want to get you leveraged up, companies that want to try to sell you gold at ridiculous commissions. So again, don't want any part of any of that. Just ask that you support the channel, but I do need to hear from you. So if you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. Dow was down 626 points, down over 1.5%. The S&P was down over 2%, down 119 points. The NASDAQ dropped by 3.25%. The Russell down 3.09%. The VIX surged by 33%. That means in the next two sessions, the VIX is predicting that we'll either get a bounce or a bottom. 95% that chance that happens in the next two trading sessions. But let me say this, if we start going parabolic again on the VIX, and you throw that out the window, is a 95% chance in the next two trading sessions. We may go lower or we get the rebound, but in the next two sessions, the VIX is predicting, based on historical data, that we will have an up day form either a bottom or a bounce, one or the other. Now, NASDAQ 100 dropped 3.15%, down 615, almost 616 points. It had already dropped below the 10-period moving average. It lost the 20. And I talked about over the weekend the possibility of a bull flag breakout on NASDAQ. That breakout on Friday was a fake out move. We had the triangle on the S&P. It was also a fake out move, and now we turned sharply lower. Momentum has already been bearish on NASDAQ. Now momentum is turning bearish on the S&P 500 with today's sell-off. Momentum had turned bearish last week on NASDAQ, and we lost that 10-period moving average. Momentum signals already turned bearish. The S&P is turning bearish. It's the NASDAQ daily chart. This is the S&P daily chart, and again, S&P lost over 2%, lost 119.5 points, coming back to test the 50 period, but momentum shifting now for the S&P 500. I still think the S&P will go make a new high. I think NASDAQ is getting that larger corrective pattern. I think S&P is pulling back, and then it'll go up and make a new high, and then we'll complete a top surrounding the Fed pivot, either before the Fed pivot, with the Fed pivot, or shortly thereafter. S&P daily here, momentum turning. You see the little red arrow? We took out the lower boundary of the cloud. That means that the cloud is now red, which will show up tomorrow. So again, while I think we'll end up moving to a new high, we'll be watching to see just how big of a pullback we get. Shift in momentum today on the Dow. We did get a red bar on the oscillator, but you've got these divergences going on with the MACD and the RSI. A good shot. The Dow is peaking, and again, often Dow will peak before the S&P 500 because of the S&P having a great tech influence now, and the influence of the Magnificent Seven. About this divergence over the weekend on the Dow and late last week that was forming, and it looks like it's now playing out. Again, the Dow down 600 points today, but you've got the divergence going on here with the MACD and the RSI, and again, this is as we're slamming into that 125-year trend line. Be watching to see Does this produce a reversal on the Dow? Does the Dow in fact peak? Maybe when the S&P goes to make a new high, which I believe it will, maybe the Dow makes a lower high. Sometimes that is the case at turning points. Again, we had the VIX up 38%. So again, the VIX is predicting that we're going to get either bounce or bottom within 2 days, 95% chance that happens. When you start getting parabolic moves on the VIX when it doesn't work anymore. So be watching to see what happens here. We're back above the 50-period moving average. That's a green line right here. The 50 is still above the 200 in a golden cross on the VIX. This is very bearish for the market. But as I've said, I think that S&P will make a new high. Talking about a bigger pullback, a possible bigger pullback for the NASDAQ, a drag on the S&P. We have the possible breakout of the triangle on the S&P 60-minute chart. That has now failed. Possible breakout of the bull flag on NASDAQ. That has now failed. Just a head fake above the trend line there, and taking out the lower boundary, the cloud or the triangle here on the S&P. NASDAQ had that possible breakout of the bull flag. It failed, and I talked about that if we couldn't traction back up, I was watching these gaps. I told you I was watching the gap down here or the gap up here. Which one's going to get filled first? Well, this gap down here, the gap down here got filled today, and we filled that gap. So again, we'll be watching to see, do we get bigger pullback going higher, but momentum is shifting on the S&P 500, or is the sell-off short-lived attempt to rebound? I've talked about this ABC corrective scenario for NASDAQ. I've been talking about it for quite a while. If we have a 5-league push lower here, then again, we could see an A, a B for a shallow retracement, or a B for a deeper retracement towards the 200 maybe, and then a rebound back up to fill the gap, and again, likely set up a lower high. I've talked about this at great length and detail. I believe that NASDAQ peaked back on July 10th. You to be looking for a sell-off with the CPI on the 11th. It happened. We dropped 500 points, rebounded back up, got a lower high. That was going to happen off the 10-period moving average, and we quickly moved to the 78.6 Fibonacci. We hit it right on the nose, and then we turned and we saw this sharp drop down of nearly 16%. But I believe that NASDAQ peaked over here in all likelihood, and I think that we're getting an A and maybe a B if we get a little bit bigger move down, or a shallow retracement of B, and then I think you're going to get a C move that will come back and fill the gap at 20,398, the 20,400 area. I think it would diverge from the S&P 500 at that time. I think the S&P will make a higher high, NASDAQ will make a lower high. So again, while we're selling off right now, I still think we're coming back up to 20,400 or so to test this high and likely get a lower high. Probably see the S&P make a new high. I think the Dow could be topping from last week's high. Talked about that over the weekend. I talked about that 125-year trend line all last week. I think the Dow could be turning off at that level. NASDAQ daily chart here. The momentum is shifting, and the S&P is now taking out the 10-period moving average. The momentum is clearly shifting. I still think we're going to go back and fill the gap here, which we failed to do with this rally. That gap is likely to fill before we get a major reversal, usher in the bear market. Momentum had already shifted on the NASDAQ. Now it's shifting on the S&P 500. Once this sell-off is done, I think we'll make new highs. Then I think we're going to top out and begin a bear market. S&P daily here. Right now, the RSI is right at the 50 level. We start breaking that level and going into the negative region, you can get a bigger sell-off. Or if you go negative, but you're only there briefly, then you can recover. You can go negative for a little bit and then attempt a bigger recovery. I'll be watching if the RSI starts moving below 50? And then if so, does it remain there? Do we lose the 20 period moving average, which we're testing right now, and it's acting as support, the 20 period moving average? That's a little blue line you see right there. NASDAQ is losing the 20-week moving average, and the RSI is dropping below the 50 level with today's sell-off. The risk is that we get something bigger, that we have this leg down here and that we're getting an A, we get something bigger, a B, and then go up and get a C up to the 20,400 area, and then top out and reverse. That's the risk here. The RSI moving below 50 today with this sell-off of 3% on the NASDAQ taking out the 20-week moving average.